I hope you are watching my screen. So just to change to the second slide, here are some of the figures or pictures of us, the presenters of today. So I'm in the left, then Stuart Campbell will just start to present something about the project. Stefan Modaferi as well relate to the open calls, and then Francisco with more technical information. So this is the agenda. Session 1, I'll try to have in 15 minutes, between 15 and 20 maximum, with introduction to ZDMP project by Stuart, giving a project overview, talking about the objectives and the value proposition of this, and also introducing some of the pilot use cases. Then Stefan will introduce details about this open call, the call overview, the type of sub-projects, which is very important, the type of applicants acceptable, and a short overview of the supporting materials that you just may use to submit your proposal and some of the regulations. Then the session number 3, presented by Francisco, will be introducing more, I'll say, technical details about the project. So Francisco will present the platform architecture, some of the key features, technologies, services, and some of the components which is important to you to know in order to be able to answer or to use them in your proposals. And then we have a kind of open discussion, which will be moderated by me at the end of these sessions. But you can, in the meanwhile, just putting some of the questions in the key and a feature that you have in the tool. Okay. So I just pass the floor to Stuart.
Can I just intercept? This is Stefano. Good morning, everyone. I think what you need to know also is that this webinar is going to be recorded. We need to inform you about this, and then it's going to make public. Hope no one has objection with that, because it's important that we make this available for later for people that could not attend it. Thank you.
Thank you, Stefan. So now, Stuart, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, you can see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so everybody, welcome to this this third webinar, or the webinars are broadly speaking the same, except the Q&As. But obviously, this is just after Easter, so I'm pleased to see you here and back in action. So I'm going to give you a whirlwind tour of ZDMP as best as I can in the time available, just to give you a bit of a flavor. So this is, well, where's that gone? This is what our project is all about. Well, of course, it's about zero defects manufacturing. It's the right product at the right time, but the main features are it's an overall platform with components and applications on it, which we hope that users both within the project and beyond the project can take advantage of. And the key thing is, it's not just the product side, it's also the process quality side of things as well, for example, about energy efficiency. So this is the infographic of the project. This is the kind of key details. It summarizes everything in one go. First of all, as a project ourselves, we're a pretty big project. It's about 20 million via cost. It's about 30 different partners. But I think the more interesting things are around half of those partners are users, mainly small users, but a few big users as well, such as Ford. And also about half of the project are SMEs, divided between users and an awful lot of technology SMEs. Interestingly, I think we have DIN as one of our partners. I'm sure you know DIN is one of the world's leading standards organizations. And from a European perspective, they are the kind of focal point for Industry 4.0. So they're looking at how certain aspects of our environment can, for example, be standardized. So I'm going to discuss the circle in a few other slides, and you see at the bottom a few of the names. Here's a bigger picture of them. Of course, a lot of the SMEs, indeed, like Information Catalyst, you probably haven't heard of. But you know, there's some partners you will recognize, particularly for those of you who have been involved in H2020 before, people like Icalan. You know some of the bigger names like I mentioned Ford, but also Continental, and several other organizations which are really spread across Europe. And of course, we have academic partners such as University of Southampton and Unanova, who are presenting also in this in this session. So a typical mix of partners. The objective of our project is, well, zero defect solutions in the context of Industry 4.0. So it's looking at the entire value chain. Whilst we focused on certain domains, actually we're domain agnostic. We use domains mainly as a kind of piloting of our concepts. And that concept is to provide a runtime platform and importantly, a marketplace, which I'll come on to in a moment in the context of a company we've actually formed between the partners, a formal company, which is called I4FS. So you can imagine we're dealing with the typical things connected with zero defects, Industry 4.0 and digitalization, things like IoT, data acquisition, interoperability, orchestration, monitoring. So some of the, let's say ICT and technical concepts you've seen all around you today, and we have plenty of components that support those actions. And another thing is analytics and AI, and a lot of that is to support the analysis of data, of course, and you're again familiar with these concepts floating about us today. This particular project was part of a H2020 call, and for probably most of you know what H2020 is. I'm not going to go into that because the European Commission has, well, an infinite number of information on H2020, but it's a big funding research program of the European Commission. It was about, or it is about 80 billion euros. So it's a huge program, and we're one small part of that. We actually took place in a call and won that. We came first about 2 or 3 years ago. And that call was about zero defects and another concept called lot size 1. The features of those particular projects were platform building, large-scale piloting, which I'll come on to, ecosystem building, standardization, and I've mentioned standardization. What this webinar is all about, what these calls are all about, is ecosystem building. We are, of course, only 30 partners, and 30 partners out of God knows how many European companies is not very big. So what we propose during this is we will build up our ecosystem by distributing quite a large amount of money. Actually, it's 1 million for this call and 2.2 million for a call in around August, if I recall correctly. So it's to include additional partners in our ecosystems, not as full contractual beneficiaries, but just to give money away to stimulate other parties in this field. So what are we doing? Well, the overall idea is to build a platform. This platform, spelled incorrectly, I just noticed. This platform will be available on premise and in cloud. It's composed of a set of core services, things like interoperability is, for example, a core service, and then more specialized services to deal with zero defects, namely product quality and process quality. And the aim is combining those, let's say, those three aspects, as well as external code and ideals and concepts to form applications. We call them ZDMP apps or Z apps, which people can download, for example, from a marketplace and implement in their companies, and ultimately make sure there is smart zero defects production or a product and involving a zero defects process as well. This is a stage we're at. We've been ongoing for 2 years or 2 years and a bit now. We started in January 2019. The development stage is still ongoing, but you can see this picture tries to represent an awful lot of development that's taken place. So we feel that for these type of projects, our components are in a kind of a good state. And one thing we know there's a big concern on similar subcores that the components aren't in a good state, and B, the components aren't documented. So Francisco will talk about what we've done for documentation and how-tos and stuff. We think we've done quite well just there. So we are now just at the end of March, beginning of April, and we're now moving on to this preparation stage for the subcores. So this is part of the bidding process, and of course you need to submit by the end of April, and then after that there's a contracting phase and the operational phase of the subcores, both core 1 and core 2, over the next 2 years, and Stefano will talk a little bit about that. More or less in parallel with that, we are also starting to deploy some of this technology in our internal pilots as well in the various sectors. So core 1 is now. Core 2 will be in August. You can actually participate in both cores, so that's perfectly acceptable to us. So this is what we're all about. It's about a digital platform. Okay, so we have repeated that many times, but some principles, and I think the key ones are really interoperability. The things we have been developing are part of an architecture, and we hope you can embrace at least parts of that architecture in some of your solutions. And also we've tried to stick to an openness principle. You've seen the inclusion of DIN. A large number of our components are open source, but this is not strictly an open source project. So some components are not open source. And indeed, the things that you may propose, they could be open source or they need not be open source. There's not a strong decision or mark to say, if open source, this is a really great project. So you need to do what is best for your particular environment. So this is our diagram. I'll talk about this in a little bit more detail now. So what we have at the top is we have a series of users, of manufacturers who require solutions to their zero defects challenges. And what they would do is go to our marketplace and look for existing zero defect applications, or perhaps in some cases they might want to build applications into their systems, or maybe they're a developer who wants to take some components and create new applications. So they can extract from there, just like in any marketplace, applications and components and services. But unlike some of the popular consumer marketplace, they can also ask for new applications and interact with some of the technology developers who may be interested in providing them. On the right hand side, and it kind of mirrors on the left hand side as well, we have people who provide technology, essentially. So that is technology companies such as software companies, developers, but also on the left-hand side of the diagram, the zero defect technology providers. These are more perhaps hardware related, although typically, of course, they have some software as well. But what they do, they're building their components, they're building their applications, and ultimately they're published them as a ZDMP asset on the ZDMP marketplace, and that asset may or may not have a price or some restrictions on limitations, and hopefully the users buy those applications, use them to get advantage, and at the same time the marketplace will take a commission on the sales. So that's the overall kind of concept in the exploitation potential, that there will be a commission on the sales that can sustain the marketplace, and everybody will be happy. Beyond that, we have the manufacturing infrastructure. Of course, all the different machines, equipments, the lines, they need to be connected to this. We can't connect to everything, but we hope that people will provide connectors to that, APIs, drivers, services. And of course, we have some of those parties already in the projects which are exactly doing that. People like Fidia, who provide various types of machine. We have systems integrators. We've only really got a couple in the project themselves, but these are the parties that are typically going to take in slightly more complex environments all the functionality, all the components, or the different assets and applications, and help individual manufacturing users to integrate these things. And then finally, we have the hardware equivalent of the software. So these are the people who also provide certain types of equipment, or will develop equipment, and may integrate some aspects of ZDMP into this. So this is the overall picture to develop zero defect stuff, to put it on a marketplace, and hopefully to sell it to users. So, of course, there's some tangential features to this. Many of I've mentioned the marketplace, and this is a real business opportunity. But you can imagine, some other buzzwords. Of course, we take care of privacy and security. Open source, I've mentioned. Another important thing is we'd like to make tools for developers to make the development of these applications as easy and as quick as possible. And there is a certain orientation towards SMEs, and you've seen that in these calls. They must be, the proposals must essentially be led by an SME. These are some of the features and the key parts of the kind of pinkish big blocks: materials and energy efficiency, data acquisition, autonomous computing. Francisco will mention some of these as examples later on, but really, if you want to take advantage of these, you've got to explore our documentation. We can only achieve so much in an hour session. Upon saying that, these calls should be fairly simple, and we don't really want you to go too deep looking at these things at the start. You have a good chance of winning, but you have a good chance of losing as well. So, you shouldn't go too deep into this. You should make a nice, simple application where the key part of things is the ideal, the concept, rather than the deep technical detail. I mentioned to you that we are trialing this in several sectors, notably automotive, machine tools, and electronics, and also construction. So construction is like the ultimate pop-up factory. We will also have a cross-domain demonstrator I mentioned in a moment, and we have an experimentation facility as well. So this is a pre-composed facility. You see the facility here. It's in Tampere University in Finland, and perhaps a little bit unsurprisingly, it simulates a mobile phone production line. So I guess Nokia had quite a few spare bits of equipment lying about when they moved away from this. So it's not compulsory to take advantage of this, but it can be certainly very interesting in the evaluations, dependent on what you might propose, and it may kickstart your developments as well. This is an example of our user system dealing with process and product quality. These are some of the partners we have. You can see it's quite an integrated system. So in automotive, for example, instrumentation clusters. In the electronic sector, there's some assembly of components by Continental. Continental then feed that, for example, into Ford, along with engine blocks from MRHS. And so you can see this is quite integrated. So when you are thinking about this, also think about both individual kind of specific factory applications, but maybe ideals between partners in the supply chain as well. Here's an example. We have lots more information on this, and there's a very complicated link below. But if you go to the website, you will see some kind of use case material. We've got about 13 use cases, and we actually intend to develop around 40 different applications within the project of various sizes. Not going into detail, but just to give you a flavor, another one is machine tool manufacturing. Another one is the instrumentation clusters. They're using X-ray tomography just there. So that's another part of the zero defects environment. Construction, more basic materials, steel tubes, stone tiles. So we have a series of SMEs, some quite small companies, but they provide to building sites, and they need high quality just like everybody else. Starting to close off now. An interesting feature of what we've done is we decided in a lot of these projects that, you know, you come to the end of the project and you do good, exciting stuff, and you say you'll work together, but actually at the end of the project, nothing in forms of kind of joint exploitation takes place. So what we did right at the very start of the project is to form a company. It's a formally constituted company registered in the UK called I4FS, and the ideal of I4FS is to run the ZDMP marketplace and to kind of exploit the concepts. Actually, they were ascribed as a company by month 9. They are already integrated into the consortium as a beneficiary. The shareholders are several partners in the consortium. Some partners can't, by statute, for example, universities can't be kind of have such shareholdings, but there's a lot of shareholder partners from the consortium, and we want to make sure that this is a kind of primary exploitation vehicle post-project for sustainability, and hopefully if you are building applications and components, then they will also go on the marketplace and they can be exploited by I4FS, and therefore you can make the money from there. So this is where we're at now. We're on a core focusing largely on components, and core 2 will focus also on components, but on Z apps and platforms. We get a question, which is what's the difference? And the honest answer is it's a bit elastic. Okay, so the components tend to be less usable in their own right, and the applications tend to be completely usable by users. But there is a very kind of long gray line between the two of them. Stefano will come into these activity areas. There are about develop, which basically means new components, integrate some of our components into your existing ones, or validate our components. We, in general, expect most applications to be in the develop area and less in the validate line. But we don't have any strict percentages. So if everything is in develop, then if they're the best proposals, then that's fine. If the best proposals in validate, then probably that's fine as well. But ultimately, it would be down to neutral evaluation. Lots of information on the website there. So if you haven't done so already, please log on to that. Please do take advantage of our FAQ. We've had quite a lot of people emailing it. If you don't find the answer on the FAQ, of course, email us. But to be honest, probably about 75% of the questions we get are already addressed either in the guideline for applicants, which is on those pages, or the FAQ. So they tend to ask repeating questions, which we've already said and are really quite detailed in the in the core documentation, mainly to do with administration more than anything else. So this is an example as the application form. We've kind of pre-written a template. So the ideal is to predefine things as much as possible. I estimate that if I filled this in, because I'm quite practiced in this, it would take me about 4 hours, because I have to think of an idea, I have to document it, etc. Sorry, it would take me about 2 hours, but I think for most people, it will be about a morning's of work to think about the concept, to organize a little bit and write it down. So for 50 to 150K, I think that is not bad. And, you know, we're going to sponsor about 10 projects. I think we will probably get 30 applications, which we're very comfortable with. So I think a 1 in 3 success rate is pretty good to take part, or at least we hope it would be, and the amounts of money are fairly respectful. Technology, Francisco, as I said, will come on to these. We've got various platforms, various components operating in different ways, so please do read about them, think about how you use them. Funny enough, it's not actually compulsory to use any of these components, but it also would be, I suppose, pretty surprising to us. One thing is for sure, don't start using components if you don't need them. We don't have a marking which says unless they use 7 components, please fail this proposal. All right, so please only use what is necessary for yourself. Lots of documentation, as I mentioned. I4FS, please think about that. Think about how you can factor that in your exploitation as well. And we hope you can upload your stuff to the marketplace. And that's a whirlwind tour of ZDMP. So now I'm going to hand back to Yao, and he's going to introduce the next lot. We're not taking questions right now. We're going to hold all questions at the end. So as Yao said, please, if you can, in the meantime, fill in the Q&A. There's a button at the bottom of the screen. You can put your questions in there, and already we will start typing answers, but also you can ask them at the end as well. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Stuart. I think now invite Stefano. Are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Let me share my screen if I can.
Okay. So the floor is yours. Okay.
Yep. So do you see my screen?
Yes.
It's in presentation mode now.
Yeah. We are watching one of your slides.
So again, sorry?
We are watching one of your slides. Type of
yes,
support.
sorry, I'll just go back. So that's the right one.
Okay.
You're seeing it?
Yeah.
And it's on okay, in full screen. So good morning, everyone. And I'm Stefano Modafferi from University of Southampton. I will try to drive you through some more details on how to write the application, what are the resources and things like that. First, let's go back to something that Stuart has stressed many times. Why we want to do this? We want to do this because we want to build an ecosystem. We want to improve the existing ecosystem. We want to join existing ecosystems together. So it's really a call for new ideas, further experiences to come together for reaching a critical mass in the ecosystem that can really start producing benefit to the European economy. And this should be a win-win situation, a win situation for Europe, because we improve the offer and we link offers together, and an occasion for yourself, for your company, because you get some funding for further develop your solutions, and then a place where to market them if you want so. What we offer, we basically are going to fund with this call between 10 and 15 sub-projects, and they can range between 50 and 150K each. It's important you will own and exploit what you produce, so there is no equity here, no equity request, and there is no IPR pollution. So whatever you do, it's your product. You can get lots of people. Stuart presented many of them, and this is a good opportunity for new working relationships in the domain. And it's important for future possibilities that are going to be beyond ZDMP, but are still there for you to exploit. There are different type of projects, so depending what you are more interested in or more skilled in, you can pick the right one for you, and you will get lots of support from documentation and emails and availability of people trying to answer your question. I'll say this maybe a couple of times because it's very important. We will not be able to offer bespoke support to proposal. If you come to us and say, I have this idea, is it good? We cannot answer. Or if you come to us and say, can you help me to write a proposal? We cannot support you, because we are administering cascading funding, and we need to be fair and equal with everyone. So this type of questions are either too specific or too related to just one question, one application, and we cannot give this support, but we can offer you lots of more general support. When you ask support, think that whatever we say to you, we want and we have to say to everyone else. So it needs to be relevant for at least a good number of people, maybe all, if possible. The timing, we are already approaching the close of the call. It was opening the 1st of March. It's going to close the 30th of April. But as Stuart said, the process of writing an application is not going to be long, because we had in mind startups and SMEs when we designed the application template. There is an evaluation period, and then the idea is to start working in August, September 2021. The three activities are development, integration, and validation and testing. The development aims at creating new components and new services. The idea here is really you create something new, or you seriously improve what you have for the benefit of the industry. The target audience is mainly SME and technology providers or software development. The amount is equal for all the calls, the types of sub-calls, sub-projects, and is between 50 and 150K. The development is for, these are ideas, it's not limiting to, but you can have new design time or runtime components. You can have AI, machine learning solutions or new algorithms. You can decide to extend something that exists in the platform. There is or port this existing component in a different domain. There is a documentation, detailed documentation of the tools available for already developed in the project. The second type of sub-project is integration, and the idea is here that we want to integrate, to extend the ZDMP platform, integrating already existing components, service and platform. So here it's something that is already up and running, and we want to have them interacting or as integrated as possible with the ZDMP solution. In this case, we also think that this call is relevant for platform owners. The EC has funded in the last years many platform projects. So we have now lots of disconnected platforms. Connecting platform is something that we think can be relevant here. If you are in contact or you're the owner of an interesting Industry 4.0 platform, you can think of making it interoperable with the ZDMP one. Yeah, I said these are typical examples of what is possible. Again, it's not limiting to this. It is just, these are just examples. It's up to you to decide what to propose, and it's going to be evaluated by external evaluators. The validation is more about coming with use cases, ideas, business ideas, environments, specific environments, and test what is the ZDMP offer to see if it is suitable for the specific business case. Maybe having a gap analysis or things like that. In this case, you will be more, you still need to be probably technology aware, but you will be more on the user side and owning or working with the use case owner to create, to understand, to create reports, to understand if the offer, sorry, if the offer is fit for purpose. Some ideas, again, functional validation, scenario validation, or technical validation are all good. Performance testing, availability testing, suitability testing are these all possible ideas for this type of project. Here is the target audience. We want to, we think the main target are EU SMEs, but not limiting to them. You can have either a single application, single applicant application, and it must be an SME, or you can be a small consortium that must be led by an SME and should include another partner. This second case is, for instance, if you have a platform owner, or if you have a use case, or if you have a specific technology provider, or if you are working with a university that you want to involve. That's the idea of consortium we have. consortium we have, but it must be led by an SME. That's important, because otherwise you will be considered ineligible and just excluded. The support materials are a lot is there. There are lots of things are there. You can send emails to the address that you see there, and we will respond in 48 hours. You need to download, you can download, and you need to download documents that are the guide for applicants, the proposal template, the declaration of honor, and the ethics statements. The guide for applicants is the Bible, as I call it, in the sense that whatever source you look at, if it is in conflict with the guide for applicants, if there is unclear points, what matter is the guide for applicants, is our ruling document. So refer, the guide for applicants is really what you need to read carefully to understand how to write your proposal. There are 3 webinars that this is the last one. All of them are going to are recorded and put on the website. We don't share the slide per se because we think it's important to the discussions that happens around them, but you can download the video, look at the video, and have all the information there. There is the FAQ where lots of questions are answered. Please look at the FAQ because it's pretty rich. And you can have lots of other information around the ZDMP use case and technical information there. Submission process, you need to download the template, the declaration of honor, the text statements from the resources link, and then you need to upload it on the F6S portal. These are 2 different portals. The ZDMP website portal is what we control, where you find the document, support. The F6S is a third-party platform that most of you already know, where you will need to upload your documentation once they have been filled in. Rules, let's spend 1 minute here reading them. So it's important that you get all of them right. You can apply more than once, but only one of your application will be funded. We got the questions via email saying, what if I win in the first call? Can I still apply to the second one? Yes, you can, is the answer. You need to answer each question. If it doesn't apply, if you think it doesn't apply, explain us why. Don't just put an A there, because that is just going to be scored low. You need to be clear and concise and respect the word limit, the length. Think that we all know about Industry 4.0 context and technology, but we don't know the specific of your business or market. So you need to find the right trade-off, not to tell obvious things and not to tell us, and not to leave us without key information on your proposal. You can include visual elements, but you cannot exceed the length. We will not look at any link or information outside the document. So any website, video, or anything like that cannot be there. Or you can put it there, we will just ignore it. You need to comply with the eligibility criteria, and remember to sign and upload the ethics declaration of honor. The 2 main anticipated problems from an eligibility point of view are lack of sign in the ethics and declaration of honor, that is excluding you. And the second one is exceeding the length of the proposal. These are the 2 main issues that honestly are pretty easy to address if you think about that, but also pretty easy to overlook. And it's a pity if you just get excluded because you went over 2 pages. It's really, the criteria says that if you're over, you're out. It's not that we ignore the exceeding pace, you're over. This is as hard as it can sound, but at least we have told you 3 times now that this is the case. It is written in the guide for applicants. Now, the total funding will be according to the standard AI funding rate for each bidding organization. This means that if you're a profit company, 70%, and if you are a non-profit, it's 100%. What does this mean? In a simple example, to have 150K of funding, you need to have costs for around 215 K, because 150 is 70% of 250K, 15K. The minimum of 80% of the call will go to eligible SME only. That the consortia need to adhere to the restriction of the standard AI funding rates that I just explained. Then if you want to subcontract, we allow it, but again, the cost of subcontracting, whatever you agree, is going to be funded at 70%. Sub-project winner will own the output, as I said, and will be free to exploit. Then we expect that your output will be hosted on the marketplace free of charge, both for the third party and for the project for 1 year after the end of the project, with any of the revenue generated for the sub-project business and commission considered in the contract. So we expect that for 1 year at least, you will be hosted in the web marketplace for free, and that the revenue generated are going to be shared according to the business model of the E4FS. The relevant sub-project will need to be hosted for 1 year after the end of the project on the platform, as I just said. Ongoing hosting will be subject to bilateral negotiation and will be subject to an agreement. And the validation results, particularly relevant for the third type of sub-projects, must be provided to free of charge to everyone for a limited period after the end of the project. That is important. You can find a detailed description of these in the IPR for subcalls that I invite you to read. There is a second call that is going to open in August. As Stuart was saying, this first call is more focusing on creating components that can underpin services at the end of the day. August call is going to be more around creating applications, apps that use that components that are already present and developed during this call. As just a heads up, the call will open in August. Will be a bit richer, and just stay tuned for that, because we will let you know through the newsletter and the channels that we used to reach you that it's going to be open in due time. I think that's it, and I can give back the floor to Joao.
Okay, thank you, Stefano. So now is the time for Francisco. Francisco, are you there?
Yes, hello. Let me share my screen.
Okay.
Okay, share screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Joao. Hello, everyone. Thanks for attending to this webinar. I'm Francisco, Technical Manager of ZDMP from ITI, and I'm going to show you an overall vision about the technical foundation and features of ZDMP that could be interesting for you in this open call. These are the objectives of this talk. Basically, is to know the key aspects of ZDMP architecture, know where to find more technical information, and know what components are available under main features. And finally, we will see a use case example. Well, in the first place, ZDMP uses intensively Docker and Kubernetes, and depending on what you are going to develop, the knowledge of that technologies is more or less required. ZDMP has components that hides the complexity of these technologies, but depending on your needs, you will need to know them. If you are thinking about machine learning, ZDMP provides several components that ease the work and supports several technologies like Python or H2O that basic models that are using Java as the underlying technology. The technical foundations of ZDMP are basically these. It's container first, extensible, distributed, composable, secure, and interoperable. Please check out these foundations in more detail using the link that appears on the screen. And of course, you need to know how ZDMP works and which features are available for you. Well, this is the full architecture of ZDMP. As you can see, there are a few components. We will explain some of them more deeply later. And what I want to remark here is that ZDMP has two important flows. The first flow relates to the industry and the manufacturing process, in which data is acquired, transformed, and computed using the edge tier. Once the data is ready, is pushed to the platform tier, in which is moved to the adequate subsystem for their processing or storing. Then the enterprise tier goes into action, aiding features like security and allowing the users to consume that data easily. The second flow is more related to the developers, data analysts, and in general to users that want to develop or create something into ZDMP. In this case, the entry point is the developer tier, in which users can use components to develop applications, machine learning models, or simulate conditions to make decisions. Of course, these components use again the layers described in the previous flow. If you want more information about the overall architecture, please use the link that appears on the screen. But remember that ZDMP is extensible, and this is where the zComponents goes into action. A zComponent is a software which consumes ZDMP core components to extend ZDMP features, and that software could be only a frontend which use ZDMP's APIs, or can have more complexity, including their own backends or databases. This is what we expect from you in these open calls: develop new zComponents that will extend the ZDMP features, aiding more value to the platform. But yes, for this, you need to know what are the features and the technical details of every core component of ZDMP. For that, you can access to software.cdmp.eu site, in which all the technical documentation related to components is available to consume. That includes also the open API specs and all the important things of every component. What do the component, how to do it, how to install it, how to use it, and what are the relationships between that component and other components in the ZDMP architecture. So just go to the site, click on Go to Docs button, and you can navigate through the left menu organized by tiers to know more details about a component. When you go into a component, you can find the table of contents in the right menu and a summary table with the main resources of that component. I suggest you to see the videos of those components that are interesting for you, because it's a good summary in 3 or 4 minutes, worth it. And of course, you have also the open API specs available. Before we get into the detail of the components, let me tell you some key aspects of the architecture. In the first place, ZDMP has been built with security in mind. All the communications pass through the service bus. This is an API gateway in which several security controls are considered. In addition, all the ZDMP components are continuously monitored in real time, including which processes are running and searching for security events and anomalies. And finally, the identity management and authorization of the whole platform is centralized using key cloud technology. This is the interface of the service bus, also known as the API gateway. As you can see, every request has several security checkpoints and has his own flow. Another key aspect in the data is the data interoperability. The data acquisition is so important in the manufacturing process, and ZDMP talks the most used industrial protocols, specifically OPC UA, Modbus, CAN bus, and Profibus. For other protocols, a specific adapter is required. In any case, there are components in the ZDMP architecture that allows you to deploy these adapters easily. Also, ZDMP talks internally MQTT and AMPQ protocols that are widely spread, and this enables an easy integration into the platform. If you think in artificial intelligence and machine learning, ZDMP also offers several AI technologies. You can use a set of opinionated algorithms and technologies that ZDMP brings to you based on H2O, Docker, and Python, or you can upload your custom AI algorithm based on Python. Okay, let's start to show some components features. The first one is the data acquisition component, which allows to manage external data sources and bring data inside ZDMP architecture. As we said before, talk several protocols like OPC UA, Modbus, CAN bus, or Profibus, but also can retrieve data from a REST API. This component provides also a graphical interface which requires minimal to known code writing. The underlying technologies are Cumulosity from Software AG and Node-RED, that it's a well-known low-code application. Once the data is acquired, usually needs to be transformed. For that, we can use the data harmonization component, in which you can design, manage, and execute data transformations and extract a hidden value from data with semantic functionalities like ontologies and so on. In the screen pictures, you can see an easy transformation of data. In this case, it's only a subset of the original data, but you can perform quite complex data transformations. Another important component is the service and message bus. The service bus is a central place for managing all APIs of the whole platform to apply global policies, and also provides several out-of-the-box features for APIs like versioning, analytics, etc. It's also known as API Gateway, and just in case you find the term API Gateway in the documentation, that refers to the service bus. On the other hand, the message bus provides publish subscribe messaging to the whole platform. It's based on RabbitMQ and supports both MQTT and AMQP protocols. It's the preferred way to interchange data between components, and as developers of a C component, it's highly probable you will use it, but of course it's not mandatory, because there are no mandatory components at all in the ZDMP architecture. Virtually, all the components of ZDMP are executed in the application runtime, which is a component that provides an underlying generalist runtime based on Kubernetes and Rancher. And this is closely related also to Docker, as you probably know. This component brings scalability and versatility to ZDMP. Again, as a C components developer, you have a high probability that your C component will be deployed at the application runtime. But again, it's not mandatory. Your component can run in other infrastructure if you want. Another interesting component is the portal. This component provides a common functionalities in a consistent way in all ZDMP, like common login and logout or consistent navigation through components. Acts as a bridge between the security component and other ZDMP components. The main security component is the secure authentication and authorization component, which provides a centralized management of users, roles, user groups, etc., to manage access to protected resources easily. Also provides a context-based authentication. That means an additional authentication factor asked to the user if the context of the user has changed. In other words, brings 2FA authentication automatically if the context of the user has changed. A change of the context of the user can be if I'm logging in from Valencia, and in the next minute I'm logging from Dubai. Probably my account has some security issues. Other important component is the secure installation. These components provides configuration and permission checking to new components in ZDMP architecture. So you as a C component developer probably will use it if your component is planned to be installed in the application runtime. Of course, the persistence of the data is a common requirement, basically for all of us. For that, you can use the storage component, which provides predefined databases ready to be consumed by components. The available databases are MySQL, PostgreSQL, and MongoDB, and also provides a distributed cloud-ready file system to be consumed also by components. In this case, the underlying technology is Hadoop. Finally, also provides an API to consume these services based on Apache Knox, which have a well-documented API. If you are thinking about machine learning, you should check out the following components. This one, the AI Analytics Designer, allows users to build machine learning scripts easily, automating machine learning workflows, which includes automatic training and tuning of many well-known algorithms. The AI Analytics Designer is based on H2O and AutoML technologies. And the other component interesting, if you are thinking about machine learning, is the AI Analytics Runtime, which transforms the algorithm you defined in the AI Analytics Designer to be executed inside ZDMP. Okay, this component provides an automatic deployment into Kubernetes of AI-based models and seamless integration with several ZDMP components like the service and message bus, authorization and authentication, or the AI Analytics Designer we talked before. In other words, hides the software engineering complexity to data scientists, not only allows deployment of models from the AI Analytics Designer, but also from another machine learning related components based on Python. Well, we have a lot of components. We have the application builder, the human collaboration, and a lot of components here. I suggest you to see that this information in the website. Okay, and finally, I want to share with you an example of use of ZDMP. Okay, let's imagine that we want to perform an anomaly detection in our manufacturing process. The first step will be to acquire the data from the production line. If our production line talks the same protocols that ZDMP, which is highly probable, you can ingest that data directly using the data acquisition component. If not, you will need to deploy a custom connector to transform the protocols of your production line to a protocol that ZDMP understands. Once the data is acquired, you can use the data harmonization component to transform that data to be easier to consume, reduce the size, ignoring useless data, etc. Once the data is transformed, it can be stored in databases using the storage component or can be pushed to a topic of the message bus component via MQTT or AMQP protocols. That's the case of this example. The data is passed to a topic of the message bus, named, for example, data to detect anomalies. The product assurance runtime, which is the component that performs the anomaly detection, is watching that topic and retrieves the data at the time it's available. This component performs their operations, in this case using machine learning, and when the result of the anomaly detection is ready, it's passed to another topic of the message bus, named, for example, anomaly detection results, in which every component interested on that results will be subscribed. That's the case of the monitoring and alerting component, which is subscribed to the anomaly detection results topic. So at the time the data is available, it's consumed by this component. Monitoring and alerting reads the result, and if the result is anomaly detected, creates and send an alert to the zComponent zAnomaly detection, which shows the alert to the adequate user, for example, an operator of the production line. Of course, behind the scenes, there are a lot of components involved, like the secure authorization and authentication, the application runtime, the AI Analytics Runtime, etc. Okay. And that's all I wanted to share with you in this webinar. Please remember that you have the documentation ready at software.cdmp.eu. Thanks for your attention. And I want to hand over to Joao to continue with this session. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So now, I hope you are watching my screen. So now is the open discussion. So as you may already see, you may find in the a key and a feature on the bottom of this webinar Zoom application. Actually, we already answered some of the questions, so I really invite you to see. But anyway, I'm also showing perhaps is a very little size, but you may see that there is already some answers or questions and answers done. So I'm just going to visit those in order for those that didn't check to also receive the information about these useful questions. So I may start from the first answered question from Caio, which just asked about the slides. So we already answered that the slides not, but you can see the recording of this session from the website. Then there is already there the 2 previous sessions, but then you can just check this one as well. Then you have a question from Patrick, which asks about 5 examples of existing applications or components. Actually, I answer one of the part of this question. So concerning the components, as you may see, there is a particular link from the website where you can find technical documentation about the components that just were present on this last session. But anyway, you can go there. There is a very nice view of draws about each of the components, and you may then go to the bottom of that subpage and you'll find very nice descriptions about each of the components. Is very useful. You can go there and check it. Concerning the applications, as we already said, for this first open call, we are not kind of offering so much this part because this will be used for the second open call. But anyway, Stuart just answers about some of examples of applications that we are developing from the project, like still sheet with monitor is just an example, and you may see here of those descriptions. And as you may see, there is also a kind of link where you can find more information about these applications. I'm not sure if Stuart, you want to say something else, or is it okay?
Right. No, sorry, I think it's fairly clear.
Okay. Then we have other question from Nick, which is about the prediction or AI components, if they already utilize the computer vision technology. Stefan, do you want to say something, since it was you that answered this?
No, I wanted to make this more general. Computer vision is a vast topic. We have lots of technology that might seem to be already used, and maybe they are already used. But when developing a component, now I'm not extremely familiar with computer vision, but for sure, if I think to machine learning, it is an easier example. You have so many algorithms, so many ways of training them, so many ways of applying them, that you can tailor that to specific problems and have tailored components. So the answer is yes, there is computer vision used in several components, but this is, if you want to look at that, you should look at that as an opportunity to complement what they do with something that you could do, not as a limitation of what you can offer. So if you're thinking exactly the same, that's not a good idea. But if you're thinking something that is not the same and address a different problem, or the same problem focusing on different aspects, then you are welcome. And the complementarity of, if you can address the complementarity of the solution in your application, that's for sure something good. Because you're saying, I'm able to interact with component X that already use computer vision, but I also extend it or I complement it because I do X, Y, Z or whatever. That's the way we should look at existing technology. not as a limiting case, but as an opportunity.
Thank you. I hope now it's clear for everybody. So then Caio also introduced another interesting question about the integration into ZDMP, and if it is a prerequisite for application, this kind of integration, so of the existing components and so on. So Stuart answered this. Do you want to say something, or? So the main thing about this integration is that there is not mandatory to go to this part of integration, but anyway, you can test this integration. So if it is a prerequisite, the answer is no. You can have other kind of applications or proposals from your side. Of course, you can test the integration with ZDMP. Then we have other question about from Caio as well. So, is worker management and human-oriented accident prevention one of the ZDMP's use case? I don't think so, but Stuart, do you want to say something about this?
Just remind me, which one is this? I'm trying to answer 50 questions at the same time. We're getting a lot of questions today. So which one was this, Yao?
No, it's about the worker management and human-oriented accident prevention.
Yeah, I think, as I said, in general, if I recall, but I've suggested in a couple of answers on the publications menu, there is a link to some of our outcomes. And one of those outcomes is a use case document. It's document D2.3. I also mentioned the link on my slides as well. And if you look into that, you see all the different applications we are developing. We have around 40, so trust me, I don't remember all of them, but I don't think there are any which are heavy to human-centric stuff. I mean, incidental, I would say, but not focused on it. So indeed, this could be an interesting concept. I should also say we're in a, we should be clear that it's not necessary that you would make proposals which are completely outside the sectors and the kind of processes which we have mentioned in our use cases, right? On the other hand, if they are exactly the same, then that's probably not so good either. So I think it's, you should think about sometimes completely different proposals in different sectors, but you could also think about proposals in the same kind of domains in different areas, or you could think about, for example, you mentioned vision techniques. I mean, vision is so wide that yes, we will address some of those vision techniques, but there are loads of other vision techniques which perhaps we didn't address or maybe didn't go deep enough with. So there's a whole breadth of possibilities for you out there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so thank you. Anyway, it's a good topic. So then we have another question from Neil. Is the data anonymization component manual or automated? Francisco, can you say something from this, your answer?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect.
Yes, if I remember well, you have the both approaches. You can perform manual transformation and also automatic transformations. But if I remember well, the automatic transformations don't cover all the features of the manual. In any case, I suggest you to check the documentation in the website because this component is well described there.
Mm-hmm. Actually, I may say something else. I think the component is as a kind of learning feature. That's why perhaps the automation is something that could be, I would say, improved with use. But anyway, it's something that you find in the documentation as well. So then we have the Eric question in the use cases. So are there exemplary data sets available as well to test the solutions being developed? So, Stuart, can you just help me on this answer
Yeah,
about the data
yeah,
sets?
sure. So there are, I think, 1 or 2 data sets on the experimentation facility, and actually this was a difficult kind of discussion of whether we would release data sets from the use case partners to use in proposals. But the final thing we decided is that for the use case partners within the project, people like Ford and Continental, there were so many concerns on releasing their data that we basically decided not to do it. Okay, so in general terms, when you're making a proposal, that you wouldn't be working with one of the partners in the project. Okay, you would always, if you wanted to work with anything in the project directly, in terms of the user side, it would always be through the kind of experimentation facility, or to twist it around another way. In terms of use case data, it's much better and much more in your control, and in fact, you know, only realistically is if you have your own use case data. That could be a user who is part of your proposal, okay, as a second partner. It might be an SME technology provider accompanied by a large or a small user, but it could also be somebody outside of the proposal. You know, everybody has their relationships with customers and suppliers, and they could be slightly external to it. So, and then you are in control of your entire project. And then we also get around all these kind of confidentiality type issues with data.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so thank you.
If I can chip in on this, what Stuart said is perfectly correct in the sense that you cannot assume anything about the usage beyond what is written there, and there is no mention of data sets. But also, I just want to point this out as a general point, not necessarily related to data set. Once you have one, so you need to have a proposal that is self-contained and good enough to be funded. Once you have been selected, then you will have the possibility of talking to partners to fine-tune your own proposal. At that stage, different discussions about usage, about interaction with specific partners can happen when you will define with us your final work plan. So don't count on them to win. Once we have won, then some some collaboration opportunities specific on your case can be evaluated on a case-by-case base according to what you want to do, to the interest of the partner you want to work with. I'm talking here mostly of technology partner. I was talking about integration. If you want to work with a specific component, software component, then I would expect that in the final work plan definition, then you will talk to this guy at some level, and this company at some level, and this will be reflected in your final work plan. But going back to the point Stuart was making, that is right, you cannot assume it at proposal stage. At proposal stage, you need to work with the information you have that are enough to give us a good understanding of what you want to do and to be evaluated and hopefully to be successful. Anything else will come on top of that later if you are selected.
Okay.
I hope this makes sense. It is quite clear, the distinction between the proposal time and once you are selected.
Yeah.
The proposal time you need to do with what you have available for everyone in terms of descriptions and things like that. Later on, something else could be evaluated on a case-by-case approach.
Okay, so thank you once again. So then we have a question from Paolo, which is about the validation proposal, who will assist the manufacturing SME in the application of ZDMP and in their environment. So I may say from this answer that it will be a kind of decision of the candidate. So if it comes by alone, I would say, by its own, So he could need a kind of a third-party assistant, I'll say, a way to test such validation or integration. We have the experimentation facility at certain point as well, but it's a kind of a good solution to bring to other partners where you can test this kind of integration. That's why we have the possibility of have two participants in a kind of small consortium. So this is a good opportunity to bring other company with you. I think this is understandable. So then there is other question from Paolo. Is it better to build a consortium SME plus software integrator or just the SME? Stefan, you said something here. Do you want to say something?
The point here is that no one is in the position to comment or give advice on this. It's a specific case by case situation as written there. It's up to you. But what we can say is that it doesn't make any difference from the evaluation point of view if you are alone or if you are bringing someone. From a logic point of view, is that if it's pointless to bring someone that can do something you can do, but it's wise to bring someone with you that can cover parts that you are not available to deliver on your own. But this is a general principle. On the specific case, we cannot really comment.
Okay, so thank you. So then we have a question from Michelle. What is the IP agreement for developing new component? Stuart, do you want to say something from this one in relation to this IP agreement?
Yes, so we've got, there's not one IPR agreement, right? So the IPR details, they're on the website. They're on the website, there's a cause menu, and under the cause menu, one of the lines is subcall IPR. And what you see is a series of templates, all of the same format, which detail the IPR for each component. So in general, the majority are open source, if I recall, but not all of them. There's also more, as Stefano said, there's also some more general kind of IPR issues in the guide for applicants, but the detail is on the website. So you need to explore each one essentially.
Okay, so thank you. Then we have a question from Naim. How will we develop user interfaces? Are there already components for it, or we should do it on our software and connect your services? So Francisco, can you help me on this one since you answered this?
Yes.
User interfaces, yeah.
There is the application builder component that brings to you an online IDE to develop your frontends with a lot of ZDMP integrations out of the box. It's based on Angular, but you can develop your own interface in your own technology and integrate with the ZDMP components by your own if you want, using your favorite technology. You have also an SDK for that. All this is in the software.cdmp.eu, but basically you can do whatever you want. You have the ID, the online ID, the application builder. You can integrate by yourself using your own technology, because all the requests are based on APIs, so you can integrate by yourself. And also you have an SDK that brings some kind of integrations for you.
I'll just add to that and maybe make a slightly wider point, which kind of extends what Francisco just said. So, you know, there's several questions we get. This is one of them, which is, you know, must you do this, or must you do this, or how many components should we use, or how many partners should we have, or do we need to do this? What we've tried to do in the proposal is based, or in the guidelines, is to make it as open as possible. So for example, let's say weirdly, we don't even say you must use a one component, I think, if I recall correctly. And we certainly don't say you must use X number of components. And the reason why we've done this is to keep it, you know, flexible. So for example, if you're doing something particular, maybe it's a very, very valid and interesting zero defects thingy that might go on the marketplace and is really a great thing and can simply complement the project. On the other hand, right, conversely to that, of course, we are the zero defects manufacturing platform project with our components in our applications. So it would be a bit weird if you wouldn't use some, some of our components, right? But on the other hand, if you used all of our components, I would personally find that a bit suspicious and false, because even in the validation side of things, I mean, validating all, I don't know how many it is, 30 components would be quite, a task. And using all of the components in a development activity, I personally wouldn't find very credible, but I'm probably not an evaluator. So, it very much depends, but the more odd it is, right? For example, using no components or using all of the components, probably the better you need to justify it and think about it, right? But it could be it could be possible. And it's the same answer for the user interfaces. In this case, it's more in the middle, so we hope you can use some elements of our kind of interface technology. And for some people that may be relevant. For some people that might seem too much hard work and you would rather focus on other aspects. And there will be advantages and disadvantages of that, depending very much on your individual context. Yeah, back to you.
Okay, so then we also have other question from Naim, which is about if we have a component for authentication authorization for hardware IoT devices. Francisco, can you say something as well? But anyway, this question, it seems again the same kind of question. Is not. It seems very technical, and it seems not have kind of I'll say importance when we are just proposing a project because it's very technical for a particular thing. But anyway, Francisco, can you just say something about this?
Yeah, that depends on the IoT device you want to integrate. If this device use an API REST to send data or to receive data, can be authenticated by the secure authorization and authentication directly. If uses another protocol like a direct socket connection or whatever protocol, you have also the secure communications component that uses certificates to encrypt the data and to somehow authenticate the IoT devices, but depends on your IoT device. That's the answer.
Okay, so thank you. Let's try to finish this. But anyway, Caio also introduced other question. In the documentation for the data acquisition component, it reads a prerequisite for data access exchange and analytics with ZDMP. Does this mean that any integration with ZDMP must be necessity make use of the data acquisition component? Francisco, can you say something about this?
Yeah, no, you can send data into ZDMP without the data acquisition component. You can develop your own system and push directly the data to the message bus or to the subsystem you want.
I think just a wider point on what I don't know how you say your name, but Chiao suggests is that indeed you've taken that quote directly from that document. So if you read exactly that document, which was written, let's say, at fairly early stages of the project, then in context, that was probably a logical statement. But now if we look at it in terms of the subcores, it's a bit hard. So in general, in terms of the subcores, we are pretty open. So even if you might see text which says it absolutely has to be done this way, that was more aimed at within the project than anything else. So for example, if one of the partners in ZDMP was developing a component or an application, they should use that as the kind of prerequisite. But these kind of statements don't apply so hard for external partners and the subcores essentially. So you need to be flexible. And if you have any doubts on these individual things, that is something you could definitely raise a question on to clarify, is this really a prerequisite or not? Or if any uncertainty, you could also maybe put some remarks in the proposal even. But better, I think, in this case, to ask a specific question via the email line if it's not in the FAQ already.
Okay, thank you. Then we have a question from Tom Plins. Can data gathering for AI models be a funded part of the work? I may say that from Stuart answer that yes, but you should think a little bit more, because if it is only about this, then will not be so highly ranked. So think twice, or at least think as a component or a feature that you want to integrate. That's
and I think this is a general point as well, not just about data gathering, but of any element. If your particular company is I don't know, interested in vision systems, right? And the thing it wants to do is to make a proposal to enhance its own vision system, to use, I don't know, a higher level definition of camera or some laser detection or whatever it might be. If it only talks about that, and it kind of doesn't link into some of the other concepts of the ZDMP suggests, my personal impression is that probably that would be lowly ranked. But I stress it depends on the evaluators, because it's very, very specific. It doesn't take advantage of ZDMP architecture. It doesn't take advantage of the components. So you cannot separate your proposals from the project as well. But equally, as I said before, we don't want to go overboard and say you have to use absolutely every element of ZDMP. That is definitely not the intent either. So you need to find a balance which fits in the context of the overall aims of our project and your aims as well. Yeah.
Okay, so then we have a question from Michelle. In case of developing a new AI algorithm, when we can see the AI algorithms developed? Francisco, can you say something since you answered this one as well?
If I understood well the question, I think you mean if you have the AI algorithm developed, how many times we need to put this into production, if I understood well. As soon as you have your AI algorithm developed, if this algorithm follows the AI Analytics Runtime specs, your model can be deployed instantly and will be available as soon as the training phase finish. But you need to follow the AI Analytics Runtime specifications. It's basically a manifest, it's a JSON file, a YAML file, in which you define which inputs and outputs you want to take for this algorithm and so many configurations. But if your training phase is short, your algorithm is pretty instantly is available in the platform.
Okay, so thank you. Then we have a question from Naeem. Data harmonization component is an application like Node-RED. Francisco, once again, can you just say something from this?
Yes, it has similarities, but it's not the same. Node-RED is more generic. You can use Node-RED to make some transformations, but also to acquire data. And the data harmonization is more specific to data transformations, but has some similarities. In any case, Node-RED is also available in ZDMP. It is part of the data acquisition component, and is integrated directly on ZDMP.
Okay, so thank you. Then we have here two open questions. Has any of you already read this and want to answer? So there is a question from Naeem.
Yeah, so the two open questions, I think one is relatively new and can be, I'll take that one first maybe. So you can see I think there were about 25 participants on this, oh no, a bit more, maybe about 30 maybe on this webinar. There were about, and you can see this is all public data because the videos are online, right? So there were about 30 in this one. There were about 25, I think, in the first one, and there were around about 15 in the second one. But, you know, of course, that doesn't mean anything. It's very easy to attend a webinar. It doesn't mean to say you will submit. And equally, actually, when my company submits, we never attend any webinar, right? We just have our own ideas and submit. So it kind of doesn't necessarily mean anything. And the honest answer is, well, you know, we don't know, right? We don't know how many proposals we will get until we get them. And so you just need to take your chance. I have to say from our side, if we had 2,000 proposals, we would be on the one hand elated that we had 2,000 proposals and we're probably the most successful project for cause possible. On the other hand, it would be an absolutely a nightmare scenario because we would have to evaluate them all. The rule of thumb is that there's generally, for no apparent reason, there's generally 4 or 5 times as many people bidding than there are spaces to sponsor. Obviously, in our case, because there's 2 cores, we've modified that slightly to a 1 in 3 chance, but really it's only guesswork, right? No more than guesswork. So you just have to do what you think is best there and judge the kind of risks of bidding and the time taken versus the chance of winning. The only thing I would say is we've tried to make the template as easy as possible. So I personally think that kind of 4 hours work for 150,000, because I'm sure most people will bid for 150,000, is not a bad return on investment. So if you can, if for those of you who are used to H2020, if all projects are 9 months, so if you scale that up to 36 months, that's a 600K equivalent of a 600K project with only 1 or maximum 2 partners, which decreases the kind of efforts and interactions significantly. So I think these are very good projects with a good chance of success. In H2020, normally it's 1 in 10 or 1 in 20. So it's a significantly better chance of success at significantly lower effort. And I think actually bigger rewards because you don't have the kind of 30 partner consortium discussions, right? Okay, coming back to the first question. Now that question has been there from the start. So what that means is actually that's a very good question, right? Because nobody was prepared to answer that fairly easily from our side. So let me, as project manager, do my best, but it's quite a long question. So let me just read it again. Value through ejection molding. Next one. So yes, first of all, it's possible to apply for both cores. Actually, you can even apply in the same core with multiple proposals, right? But if the proposal is from the same set of people, which could mean either yourself making 2 proposals or yourself and the same partner making 2 proposals, you can only win once. But you could, for example, bid as an individual SME and you could bid as an SME with another partner and potentially you could win twice. I think it's a bit unlikely just based upon statistics, but it's possible, right? So first of all, you can do it. And then in terms of the components used for that case, then I think maybe Francisco, do you remember in the use case documents? I don't think we detail the components yet for that case because we haven't started building it, have we?
Yeah, it's not in the documentation.
Yeah,
but you are lucky, Naim, because I am involved in this use case exactly. So I can enumerate the components we are using. We are started using. We are going to use the data acquisition component, the message bus, the Analytics Runtime, application runtime, secure authorization and authentication, and the product assurance runtime. These are the components that we are going to use for this use case.
So I would say that in general, though, you shouldn't concern yourself too much with that. On the one hand, it's true that I've said you shouldn't overlap exactly what we have already, because then what is the point? On the other hand, we would find it, you know, I see the likelihood of a complete overlap is very low, right? So for example, you wouldn't be deploying that use case at Ford and MRHS. We've kind of inferred that already. You would probably be bringing in maybe another company to deploy that at, or maybe as a part, you know, an outside partner. So indeed, that is also attractive. You know, I'm sure Francisco and ITI are doing really great work. But on the other hand, there's another solution for another set of partners, even if it's in the same field. It will invariably use slightly different components, slightly different technology. So in some ways, it can be quite an interesting comparison, you know, and maybe if you do a great job, I can replace ITI with you or something like that. What do you think, Francisco? Yeah.
Well, if they do better, okay.
Okay, so I think that's the question, Jara. Is that right?
Yeah. So,
Okay.
Stuart, you said that you want to present something here?
Yeah, so I'm just going to present a few slides to wrap up. So this is the reward.
Sorry, Stuart.
Please,
This is Stefano. Quickly. I see that there are lots of raised hands. I'm not sure what do you want with the raised hands. I can just by Imperium lower all the hands, and because you are all happy with our answer. If you want more, you need to write a question, but now it's pretty late. So if you still have questions that we have not addressed, please drop an email to the email address that we've shown many times. It's on the ZDMP website. We will be happy to answer your question within 48 hours at most, even much quicker than that. Okay, sorry, I just don't know what you mean with the raised hand. So I think this is a good way forward. Back to you, Stuart.
Okay, thanks. I'm just trying to share my screen here and completely failing. Why can't I share my screen?
So I have to stop. Okay.
No, it's just not showing my screen. Let me try again. Right, try that one. Excuse me 1 second while I navigate away from this. Why can't I do this? Right, so let me try again. Okay, I can't seem to share my screen for some reason. So let me just go through verbally what I was going to say. So this is a final wrap up, and to be honest, a lot of it is just repeating some points we've said in some cases several times, but still we seem to get questions on there. So these are some of the key points. A lot of them are fairly kind of administrative. So the key thing is the proposals.
You are not sharing if you want to share.
No, I for some reason I tried to share, won't share. Let me just try one more time. I don't know why it's not doing it. Share. No, it's hang on. What about this time? Share. I think this time. Yeah. What about this time? Yeah. You can see my screen now. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Perfect. Okay. So the first point is, yeah, full screen. Okay. The first point is proposals. They can either be involve one party, and in which case that party must be an SME. Then somebody asks, can it be a mid-cap? Well, mid-cap has a very variable definition, which actually overlaps with SMEs. So you need to read what is the definition of SME and find out if you fit into it. If you're unsure in that, I think there's a link in one of the frequently asked questions or in the proposal form. Alternatively, if it is a consortium, it still must be led by an SME. It could then involve another SME, or it could involve a researcher or a large company, but the SME in all cases must be in the dominant position. It cannot involve more than 2 people though. Now, you saw from Stefano, there is 3 activities, and you need to focus on one of those activities. But that doesn't mean to say you need to exclude everything else, right? So there should be a focus, but it's okay to do other things as well. You know, you could develop something and then you might want to validate what you develop, but probably that wouldn't be 50% develop and 50% validate. It would be a stronger focus on develop, most probably, right? So be flexible. So the question again about the components, you can use 0N components, but be careful. We are a project with some components, so I don't think it's beyond the realms of science to expect it would probably be sensible to use some of our components, but actually I can see some cases where it might not be, right? But of all things, do not simply promise the world, right? If you say you will develop this amazing proposal using every component, you will do all sorts of development and validation, then the evaluators generally will think, well, it might look good on paper, but can they really achieve it? Yeah. So it must be a credible proposal. ZDMP has a lot of openness and a lot of open source. This is why we're doing the calls. But for example, open source is not compulsory submitters. We are doing this in evaluation in much the same way as the EU does the evaluation, and I'm sure some of the people doing the evaluations will be one in the same. And my experience of such evaluations is that basically some people like open source and some people don't like open source as evaluators, and there is discussions around that. So it will very much depend on people's individual preferences. But as a policy, we don't have a choice on that. And also information on the open source is on the cause page and the individual IPR templates. So in terms of technology, we had several questions on that. We don't place any restrictions or demands on which frameworks or which technologies you should use. Your bids will be so different that we cannot possibly do that. But you should think about the principles of ZDMP and perhaps the upper level architectures of what it's trying to achieve. But finally, remember, this is designed to be a 4-hour, fairly easy proposal. So if you find yourself wanting to read, 3 weeks worth of documentation, I would say probably you're going about this in the wrong way, right? The main thing about these proposals is the ideal and your credibility of actually delivering them. So I think this is the final slide, you'll be glad to know. So use the template and submit via F6S, right? If you do anything else, it will be ignored. I submit a lot of proposals, right? So the EU has a template, but it made a mistake. And it says in their words like, the fonts must be reasonable, and it's a good ideal to use Times New Roman font size 11 unless there's a good reason why. And I go out my way to abuse that template in every way and being successful at it. And I use extra line spacing and different fonts and all clever stuff like that. However, because I know all of that, we've designed our template to be a little bit more bulletproof, right? So there's various instructions on there which says which font to use, how big the font should be. And if you break any of those guidelines, then you are in danger of rejection. Most importantly, as Stefano suggested, there are some page limits, right? There aren't really word limits as such, but there are strict page limits. In the EU, if you go over the page limit, they simply put a stamp on the last page and say something like doesn't count, and then individual evaluators kind of do what they want with that. In our particular bid, we say, if you go over the page limit, we will reject your proposal. All right. So please think about that very carefully, because it would be a shame to get rejected because you're one page too many. Be sure to read the guidelines for applicants. And the third bullet is not an error. It's be sure to read the guidelines for applicants, because we still get a lot of questions which are in these guidelines, and you know, you need to read them. If you don't read them, you will make a mistake and your bid might be rejected. It's not a very long document. It's not a very complicated document, but there are some small nuances there, most of which we covered in these sessions, but you should read it, right? That is the first thing you should do. After that, you should look at the FAQ. After that, maybe you really need to ask us a question via the email. As Stefano said, we would like to in some ways. You will ask us, can we use this technology, or do you think this is a good idea? But we cannot do it. And I think Stefano's point is the key one. Whatever answer we give, it needs to be given to everybody, and in general terms we will put it on the FAQ page, and so it needs to be a fairly generic question which has value for everybody. We cannot simply say your ideal is good or your ideal is bad, or we think it would be a good ideal if you add 3 partners or 2 partners or 1 partner. We just cannot do it. So revisit the facts before the submission time. You know, this is the final webinar, so you have a luck maybe of just going to the FAQ now, and we will put all these FAQs on there as well. But we may get further private questions, which we then add to the FAQ. So it would be worth just a final check before you submit it. Remember the extra forms. If you don't include the extra forms, then your proposal could be rejected, or I think these are mandatory filled. But the problem is, if you don't look at these extra forms now and you suddenly need a signature by somebody who is not available, then you might not be able to submit it. So please don't do this at the very last moment. Submit on time, 5 o'clock CET on the 30th of April. Okay, so it's not so far away, but plenty of time to make a really great proposal. And just in case you didn't see my above comments, I will mention one more time. Please read the guideline for applicants and the FAQs. So that was my final slide indeed. So let me just close that and go back to the screen. Okay, I can't go back to the screen now. So yeah, you hear me?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, I'm not going back to the screen very easy. Let's try one more time. It's asking me to join a meeting. No, it's not letting me go back to the screen. So thank you guys for attending these sessions. We hope it's been of use to you. We've hoped we've given you some good hints, but above all, we hope you will make submissions. I truly believe that these are really of benefit to SMEs, and because of the ease of the subcalls in general, and we would like to think our call in particular, it's really worth making the chance. At the very least, I would say, even if you are unsuccessful, we have another call coming up in August, so this will be a good practice. And you can take advantage of that practice. So yeah, is there anything else more to say?
No, I don't think so. So I just want to close it, if you don't mind. So
yep, perfect.
Thank you for your participation. So good luck, and hopefully you'll just be the ones that with successful projects, I'll say. So thank you, everybody, and have a nice day.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.